Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
And good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We've got a great show ahead of us, and I just thank all of you who are part of the discussion already in the last few days. We're going to answer a lot of your questions. We're going to address a lot of the issues that we are all having at this point, I included. And I just want to thank you for your participation right off the bat, listeners. Chat room, hello, good evening. Today is September 10th, 2013. You are listening to The Truth Denied, and we are broadcasted via Revolution Radio, which is at freedomslips.com. If you want to join that chat room, just go ahead and go to freedomslips.com, and you'll see a chat at the very top. Click that, and you're basically in. And go ahead and join the chat room as well, if you please. And if you have any questions from the chat room, please feed them into the chat room. And Thomas, our wonderful producer, Thomas, say hello to everybody.
Good evening.
And Thomas will be picking up those questions for you. Before we get started, I have a couple of things that I would like to address, and then there's something that Mia sent to me that I'd like to read to all of you. Of course, you know the guest this evening is Mia Feroleto. I must say that out of everyone that we have had on the show in this past year, Mia has gained amazing interest from the audience. She's magnetic. What I love about Mia Feroleto is that she's clear, she's concise, and she has no hidden agenda. This relationship that has been forming between Mia and myself is absolutely wonderful, and I don't mind saying it. It's just another human being in my life that is completely trustworthy to bring forward her experience table, as well as just absolute truth. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So I'll bring her on in just a moment, so everyone just hang in there. I want to say thank you to everyone who supports us at Revolution Radio. You know, the more we traverse on this earth sharing the truth, exposing the non-truths, if you will, the more we need to reach out in radio. And that Revolution Radio has provided this forum for hosts to be able to communicate with the world at large is absolutely fabulous. And what makes this all work is not just the hosts or the producers or those who are behind the scenes or the owner Nighthawk who, you know, built this from the ground up with a little help from his friends, if you will, who all work at Revolution Radio. Not only does that make it work, there's another component, and that's you. That's you, the listener, who has dedicated your time to listening, passing on the shows to one another. Some of you purchase archive shows. Some of you donate money on a monthly basis, weekly basis even, from a few pennies to a few $100s. This is what the community is all about. So Revolution Radio is not just a radio station on your dial. By the way, it's practically number one in all talk radio. Thank you very much. But it's not just a radio station. It is a community of different folks that have all joined together and volunteered our efforts to make this one big broadcast for the world. So I want to thank everyone involved, guests alike, for volunteering their time and their efforts to make this what it is. And I don't want to be anywhere else. That's all there is to it. And I get choked up when I say that because it has changed my life. To everyone who is listening this evening, because this show is going to be absolutely powerful. Let me give you a little bit of insight for those of you who are not familiar with my guest and friend this evening. Mia was on the show not too long ago and had an incredible response to the listeners. She was in touch with so many different people because of the show. Wonderful things occurred after the show that we did. But Mia says that we all have the capacity to connect to other dimensions and higher realms of thought. Like any muscle, the skill is not developed unless it's used. Being able to access information and healing energies from other dimensions will be explored in our discussion again this evening and even more. Now, Mia Feroleto will share personal experiences and examples of how the spiritual is at work within her own life and how she helps to facilitate others to develop these skills within themselves. A point of focus will be how to feel empowered to participate more fully in your own life while making a contribution to the world as a whole by following the prompts of our higher self that are provided for us on a daily basis. We're really going to address something this evening exactly on that note, because I asked my audience for a few days now, and I asked if anybody had been feeling anxious, panic attacks, lost at times, underlying feeling of disconnect or discontent or dis-ease. And you should see what you all have said. And in one hand, it breaks my heart at some of what you have said. So many people replied to this post saying that they are disconnecting more and more from society on purpose. That really saddens me, and I do relate to that. I really do. And it's like they can't stop. And I'm going to read a few of the posts as we go into the show so we can address them personally. Many people have even asked if they could speak with Mia one-on-one, and we'll give you the information to be able to do that so that you can get with Mia one-on-one in private. This show is it's going to be rewarding for everybody, because I'll tell you something, what the world needs is love for sure. But in my personal situation, and many of you out there, we need hope. And I find that Mia is gifted with that hope. So without any further ado, I want to bring Mia onto the show, and then I'd like to read something that she wanted me to read to all of you, and then we're going to plow right into this. Mia, my friend, jump on. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, Roxy. What an intro, my God. It's so great to be back here with you. I had such a great time on July 5th, and so many incredible things have happened in my life as a result of our conversation that evening that, I owe you, the sun, the moon, and the stars.
I'll take it. I'll take it. And for those of you who don't know, Mia and I have also spent time off the air talking about, so many things. And Mia, you truly have a gift. And you're using your gift, and I think that's really the underlying of this discussion is we all have gifts, and we just really start to need, we need to start using them. And I think that we can really engage people in that energy as opposed to this stifling energy that seems to be upon us at this point, that's paralyzing so many lives. And like I said, it truly breaks my heart. By the way, if you notice when Mia laughs, it's really contagious. Mia, you have a contagious laugh.
Well, I think laughter in general is contagious. And I'm sure everyone who's listening has noticed that when they really start to laugh, they just want to keep doing it. They just want to go on and continue the conversation in whatever direction it was headed that prompted that in the first place.
It's so true. It's so, and it releases endorphins that are so good for us. And, some of the people that had made some comments, and I completely could relate to it. I found myself, in the last 4 months, days going by.
No.
Oh, you blacked out there.
Yeah, you cut out a few times, Roxy. I'm not, just so
okay.
you know, Thomas.
Okay. And I don't know why that's happening, and it seems to happen more and more often. So I did hear the live recording of our last show that we were cutting out on. And let me ask the audience, can we just ask anyone in the chat room, are we cutting out live as well? Because if we are, I will have Thomas call me on a cell phone again, because we have not been able to figure this out. So, Thomas, do you see anybody in the chat room that's saying they can't hear us?
They're about 30 seconds behind, and
okay.
Hawk says yes.
Okay, so I am cutting out. All righty.
Once in a while, and it is not unbearable.
Okay.
So,
all right.
It really wasn't. That's why I didn't say anything until that last time there. You just missed a word there.
Okay, let's see if we can continue, and if not, maybe Hawk and the audience together can just let us know if it's cutting out too much. And Mia, if I cut out for you and it gets to where you don't know what I'm talking about, just let me know and we'll just switch me to a ground line or something.
Okay, that sounds great.
Cool, we'll just all agree. All right, so here's what, Mia, you sent to me to read to the audience. And what it is it's the Oracle report, and it's the crescent moon phase, which is challenge, growth, and gathering. The moon is in Scorpio, ruling Mahavidya Shodashi with Matangi, the administrator, and you'll explain this to us later. The update comes from September 6th, discussing the energy of Shodashi. So hang in there with me, people. Everything about today's energy speaks to controlled, concerted, skilled navigation. There are two major themes developing today. The first theme involves our personal paths. We are receiving knowledge and instruction today, so remember to be mindful of animal sightings. We are also giving knowledge and instruction to communication with our higher selves, extending the lines of our lives closer to our true course. It's about giving and receiving. People will tend to be more competitive and emotionally uncontained to various degrees, so keep this in mind also. Petty tyrants rear up. The second theme is on a much grander scope. If we were living in ancient times, we would be part of a mystery school. We do this today in a modern way, linked through the internet. It's an inferior method to the old way, but it works for now as we rectify the world back to nature, back to Gaia Sophia. Mystery schools will return in our lifetimes because we are restorers. We are birthing the second Renaissance. We transcend the boundaries of physicality in service to the same mission, and we do it despite the boundaries of space and time. We are located around the world and read the report at different times, but are united in our efforts. Today brings a special confluence of energies that asks us to come together with my focus at whatever time the sun sets where you are on Earth. We are hooking up via the sun. Our lights will go on all over the world. It is our version of 1,000 points of life. Picture it. The grid of the Earth electrifying in succession. Remember that we are maintaining the integrity of the fabric of humanity this month. We are grounding consciousness with the planet to hold beauty, life in place. So that's what you say as you face the direction of the setting sun. You say the words, I ground consciousness with the planet to hold beauty, life in place. And I personally called this holding the space. So let's see. Mia, are you still with us?
I am, and thank you for reading that, Roxy. That was such an important thing for us to hear today, September 10th, since tomorrow is the anniversary of 9/11 and the World Trade Center bombings or plane crashes. And I think, having read your Facebook post, the anxiety and the stress that people are feeling has a lot to do with the fact that we, are on an anniversary, and even though we might not consciously be thinking of these things, certainly our subconscious and our bodies are very much aware that this is going on around us. So beauty, art, music, nature, animals is the key. It's the release for all of us in terms of connecting and letting go and elevating.
That's a lot, and I loved what was in the report as well, because there's so much that makes sense. I love that you face the setting sun and say, I ground consciousness with the planet to hold beauty, life in place. Because truly, with all the upheaval going on everywhere, on social media sites, on television, people bashing others, the haters out there, hating on others because they disagree with them, whatever it may be. What we need so much of is to remind ourselves is that we live on such a beautiful planet, and we've got to bring that beauty back into existence, just like what it says, because without it, I can see why people are suffering. I mean, if you can't see beauty in the sky, or a tree, or a plant, or a flower, or your food that you eat, like enjoying your food that you eat, or like you said, animals as well, or friendships or fellowship, I mean, what would there be to live for?
Absolutely. Those are all the things that nurture us, and they're all the things that technology has pushed us away from, and we have to get back to basics. We have to get back to a sense of community, and beauty is the doorway to higher realms. The Greeks and the Romans knew something when they incorporated beauty and aesthetics into everything that they did. Every object in their home was beautiful, and today the average person has no awareness of art, the charge that real art can bring to one's life, and they're just parked in front of the TV set and eating GMO engineered food that has no nutritional value, whereas if you focus on eating fruits and vegetables, you can actually feel the energy coming into your body as you're consuming them, and it's just a totally different experience.
Right. What is one of the first rule of thumb? I'm going to take a look here at some of what people have said, and again, this saddens me. There was one comment that really struck me. Actually, there's a few of them that really struck me dumb. And I really felt for them when they said this. Let me see if I can find the comment. It was, I won't name her, but she said that because this was someone who was an activist, really doing the work, sharing information with individuals, very smart woman, and she said that she thought all of these were great questions coming from the public for the show this evening. And there's about 40 questions and comments, but she said, I share the sentiment that most people seem to have no freaking clue as to what is really going on. Just imagine how lonely this path must have been 50 or 100 years ago. And then she says something that really saddens me because I know this person personally. She says, I've lost the need to awaken others. Now, I probably would need more clarification of that because she used to be a part of a big field of assisting others and waking each other up. I don't know if she means I've lost the need to awaken others because she's arrived at a certain place in her life where she realizes that it'll all happen by osmosis, or that she means she's lost the need to awaken others because it's too overwhelming. I'm not sure. And if she wants to go ahead and post to clarify that, that'd be great. But with this in mind, the idea that people around us have no clue, and we know this. We know that people don't have a clue. A really good example of this is, I'm not a big fan, but I'm a fan of what he's been doing lately to prove the point. His name is Mark Dice, and he was on Sunday night, Coast to Coast, and Johnny B. Wells interviewed him, and he said some things that just blew me away. And one of them was, to prove how disconnected people are, he went around America on a weekly basis with petitions. And the petitions basically said, he said, just sign here, and basically what it would do would repeal the First Amendment right, let's say. One of them was repealing the First Amendment right. And he said with very little effort, somebody would say, well, let me look at this, let me read this. And he'd say, no, really, just right here, sir, just and date the repeal of the First Amendment right, which is freedom of speech. They repealed the Bill of Rights. They repealed the Constitution. And he said, and they've continued for months to go out into the streets and with little effort get signatures. Mia, why is that? Isn't it? Doesn't that just blow your mind?
It blows my mind, but I think that people have given away their sovereignty, and they're scared, and they don't really want to focus on what's going on. But your activist friend also, in a way, has the right approach, because ultimately the only person you can wake up is yourself. And when you're awake, just being around you will cause someone else to awaken as well. The energy coming into the planet right now is so high. It's so extreme. We're in the middle of a grand water trine. We may not be exactly in the middle, but the water planets have all been activated, and water is emotion. We're all being called to examine ourselves, look at our emotions, and understand that emotions are passing things. They're here in an instant, and then a minute later you're emoting about something else. And in fact, what that Oracle report is talking about is how at this moment in time, the biggest thing we can do is to learn how to focus our own thoughts and energy to create and manifest, and not let our emotions rule us and drag us around and deplete ourselves in the process. Everyone's energy is needed right now to make the world a better place. And you see countless stories on the internet, one after the other, of people standing up and saying, no, we're not doing this anymore. People standing up and becoming active within their communities and creating new projects and new solutions, and that's what we need to focus on right now, because otherwise we'll just allow this negativity to drag us down, when in fact we can't engage with them. We can't, change their mind. I personally believe that they will come around because they have no choice, ultimately. But right now, all we can do is focus on being constructive and take advantage of this extraordinary influx of energy coming into the planet. The light is it's just unbelievable. And, I've said for years that the reason why water on the planet is acting the way it is with tsunamis and Katrina and Hurricane Sandy is the cosmic Christ energy is flooding into the planet. It's the age of Aquarius, the water bearer. It's coming in, and mankind is not absorbing the energy, so water is reacting. And it's not about organized religion. It's about the teachings of Christ or Buddha or any advanced, evolved individual, and what they have to say, how they live their life. So we're in a very interesting time, and it's a very powerful time for those of us who are ready to step up and work with the energy. I don't believe there's ever been a more powerful time on Earth for personal advancement, personal growth, and personal development and enlightenment.
And I think that's wonderful. And we're coming up on welcome back. Mia, I think you said something really, truly important about we can only heal ourselves one by one. And I call it leading by example. And I believe that you probably can see it as the same. I think we become somebody who is attractive to another person who says, I like the way you're living. I like what you're saying. I like what you're doing. What are you doing to do it? A lot of times that's how it happens. Somebody is attracted to someone else's way of life. They see somebody happy and free, and they want to know how they're doing it. So I think that's part of this whole cosmic transition as well. And if we're going to be out there in the streets fighting, yelling, screaming, chirping, hating, I think that, war is not the answer, so to speak. You don't fight war with war. You don't fight fire with fire, and you certainly don't pour gasoline on the fire when it's already blown out of control. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, I completely agree with that. I don't believe we're going to war in Syria. I think it's all smoke and mirrors yet again and total bullshit. And I have to say, I have to say to everyone, and you and I have talked about this privately, we've already won. We've already won this situation. We've already won the war, the game, the chess game, whatever you want to call it. We've already won. It's just a matter of time before it all plays out. But the simple truth is, if you look at, brotherly love and the concept of community and spirituality, and again, using Jesus as an example, and I'm not talking about the Christ, I'm talking about Jesus, the man. He did not start the Catholic Church. He did not start Christianity.
Really?
He was undoubtedly trained by the Essenes and spent time in India, but he taught a radical version of love. And that is what we are doing. We are embodying and experiencing and spreading that energy. And the truth of the matter is that unless you're under a rock or out in the African bush or the Amazon jungle, Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, is in your consciousness. And the more people who are actively engaged in community and brotherly love and sharing and caring about each other, the more that is spreading from consciousness to consciousness to consciousness. And if there are 7 billion people on the planet, give or take, it's only a matter of time before everyone is aware of that and having it actively living and breathing as part of their consciousness. And
it makes sense. Can you talk a little bit more about the Christ consciousness as well? Because I think it's a timing thing for sure on so many levels. But at the same time, I think that there are so many people who went from religious to spiritualists, and I think that there are many spiritualists out there who completely understand the Buddha consciousness, the Christ consciousness, and all the rest of the list. I mean, you could say the John Lennon Christ, those who were promoting unity. The Christ consciousness, is this possibly, like you said, he taught a radical love? What do you mean by that?
Well, think about life 2,000 years ago. It was pretty brutal. And, Jesus was crucified because he overturned the tables, the money changer temple, the money changers' tables in the temple. You know, he said, you don't belong in the house of God. You're not doing business in the house of God. And he also took away the financial control, the spiritual and financial control of the temple. He was healing people. You know, people would come to him. He would heal them. He would teach them how to heal themselves. You know, I personally believe that these churches grew up to keep people from connecting to their own Kundalini energy, because if you can use your Kundalini, you can, you know, form your own conduit to God. You don't need to be listening to somebody, you know, acting as an intermediary for you. And that's really what Jesus was all about, you know, teaching the Holy Spirit or the Kundalini energy. And we all have that capability. It's our birthright. It's in our DNA. And now is the time that we're all being activated, those of us that, you know, the energy has been available to us always. And now people are finally reading. I mean, thank God for the Internet, because the dissemination of information is at our fingertips as long as you have a computer. And if you don't, you can go to the library. But we have now a repeat of astrological aspects that started in the 60s, and you know, it dissipated due to drugs and materialism, really, because you know, all the 60s flower children, you know, started to drive BMWs and buy McMansions. But we do have examples in the 20th century, such as Martin Luther King and Gandhi. And again, it's just following the example of Jesus. What would Jesus do? And we have somebody now like Chris Hedges, who I'd love to see you interview, who was a New York Times reporter who resigned from the New York Times over the war in Iraq. And it's interesting because there are parallels between his life and Martin Luther King. They're both ministers, both had fathers who were ministers, and Chris was heavily supportive of Occupy Wall Street. He just says it like it is, and you know, he's following in the teachings of Jesus and Martin Luther King. We can't be afraid right now. We have to really be willing to make a stand. And the thing about making a stand is you make a stand once, and it's a whole lot easier to make a stand the second and third and fourth time. And then, you know, it just becomes the way it is. So it's just so important that we follow our own guidance right now.
Okay, and then for those who are having difficulty, I want to read you a post here from Izzy Woods, and she was posting on this Facebook question regarding, does anybody feel anxiety or this or that or disconnected, etc. And she said, my God, Roxy, there is not enough room on this news feed for me. All of the above. Anxiety, sometimes I'm in SNS, fight or flight response for weeks on end. I feel during the dark spray times this pressure is like living in a steel wool, and I feel anxious, and my whole family experiences that. I'm totally disconnected. I cannot even remember how it feels to be happy and hopeful and carefree. I have no friends anymore, and I don't know why. But when I think of going out with a friend for coffee, I cannot understand what that would even be like anymore. I can't feel enough Pavlovian response to a once-lived part of my life. That is a huge disconnect. Then, too, I cannot stop grieving and worrying about the planet and the creatures on it. It is like I am here to witness death, and I do not like it. Yet I believe that we are so connected that the trees need me. I do not want to die alone, and I feel I owe them that respect to not leave them, too. So here's a person who's an activist. I know a little bit about her for the past 3 or 4 years. Very loving, very sensitive woman. And she's just expressed how she's feeling on a daily basis. What do you have to say to Izora?
Well, I first want to say that we all go through those moments, those times, those stretches. My Jasper, my 13-and-a-half-year-old, the first dog that I got had to be put to sleep the day before Thanksgiving, and over the past, from January of last year to January of this year, 2 of my dogs and my 2 horses all transitioned, and the heartbreak. My animals have been the most important thing in my life. I can't imagine being without them, and they do the work with me. They do the energetic and healing work with me, and to have lost, it was just an enormous loss for me. And I really questioned what I was doing here, and even if I wanted to stay, quite frankly, after the horses went, and even in December. But I realized that, in fact, I came here to do something specific, and it's I have a soul contract to do it. And I just decided, if I'm going to stay, I'm going to live my life to the fullest. And coming to that conclusion completely, transformed everything and opened so many new doors. But I also want to get back to some really basic stuff, because there has been such trashing of our food over the past 6 or 7 years. The quality of what most people are ingesting. And I can say this, a month or 2 ago, I went to a bagel place that I used to go to regularly when I lived in the area, and the quality of the bagel had deteriorated, just a whole wheat bagel, pumpernickel, a dark grain bagel. It was just garbage. And people are just consuming way too much white sugar, way too much junk, and they don't even realize it because it's labeled something wholesome, when in fact it's really not. And I just want to encourage people to, really look at their alcohol consumption, their coffee consumption, and do some reading about the types of things that will bolster your immune system so that you can deal with all this stuff that's coming at you. I live in Vermont, and maple syrup is in abundance here, and maple syrup is one of the most healing things you can eat. The trees, Vermont is one of the cleanest places in the country, and it has incredible healing properties, but, foods that have omega-3s, flax seeds, avocados, bolster your immune system, and really pay attention to what you're putting in your body, because the minute you start, after a week, no joke, when you start controlling your intake of those things, you'll feel calmer and saner and lighter and more centered. And, we really need to pay attention to that stuff right now, because Monsanto is doing what it's doing for a reason, and we have the ability to simply not consume their products.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that is with the Monsanto activism, which is huge across the globe. One of the biggest proposals from the activists is to not comply, don't buy the food. And that's a big one, because there are countries that are being taken over by Monsanto that don't have a choice, like India, let's say,
right.
or like all the rice in China is GMO. So I hear. So there are people that don't have a choice, but we still have the choice here at this point. So point well taken. Somebody asked, I don't know if you know who Jeff Harvey is, but he was on a show today. I was listening to him, and he was talking about meridians and chi energy. Made a whole lot of sense. He brought food into the picture. He talked about super nutrients that boost the level of our health and our immune systems, because the way we think and the way we feel what you just interpreted as well. The way we think and feel is directly correlated to what we're putting in our mouth.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, right? And I asked the question on the show to their host, can we change our DNA? And he said, absolutely, we can change the DNA.
And we can change our neural pathways as well.
Yeah, and I think that, you mentioned all the list of, the things, caffeine, I think you said sugar, alcohol consumption, what have you. I think you hit it right on the head. The more, let's say, garbage or whatever we're putting into our bodies, the harder our poor body has to fight to keep its immune system at a certain level, and it's got to give to get. So, at times the stress levels will go way up because you're hopped up on caffeine or whatever.
Right.
And you don't put two and two together. You know what I mean? And we're kind of stubborn. I know I'm stubborn. At the end of the day, try a day without any caffeine. Most people will say, oh my God, I got a really bad headache and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But, try 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, the headache goes away and you actually start feeling a little bit calmer. And there was, something that you can give up and replace with something else right there that makes you feel better.
Exactly. And then your responses to absolutely everything in your life change for the better.
Well, yeah, because a lot of what people are describing on this post, answering the questions, this fight or flight, I think I can relate to the fight or flight when you're already under duress and then you're not eating right. I am guilty of this, not eating right, drinking too much coffee to just keep pushing through the day. When certain elements of the day that you're needed for focus or some kind of emergency happens, it's like your body can't handle it, and you do go into fight or flight.
Right.
That's the two areas that we go into. I mean, come on, we're only human. And,
right.
and what I find, and me, I'd love for you to comment on this, I'm personally finding, and maybe if the audience can really think about this as well, I find that I can't fight or flight. When I can't somehow.
No, you become frozen.
Exactly.
You become frozen. But I have to say, because it's also interconnected. Even in terms of illnesses, illness begins on the etheric level, and it generally takes around 6 months for it to find its way into your body. So, for people who are having health issues, go back to 6 months before whatever it is actually manifested and look at what was happening in your life. And I have to say, every person that I ask this question of, they have an answer, and they're aware of the answer. They can identify what the answer is. So if they can start to unravel that, they can heal themselves. And that in combination with paying attention to your diet, being out in nature, getting fresh air, it's all interconnected, and it really is that simple. It really is that basic.
Sure, and again, that component, don't you agree, Mia, that we're not just on our hands and knees praying for wellness? We actually have to participate in numerous, let's call them practices, activities, whatever, that as a whole help us to become better people, all the way around the block, feel better, communicate better. All of it's intertwined. So in other words, just prayer alone, if you're throwing down, some cocaine and all the rest of it and booze, 24/7, well, you're not going to get too much clarity on your hands and knees praying to a source God.
Right.
I mean, this is right. I mean, I'm sorry I had to put it that blatantly.
No, it's really true. It's really so, true.
Or if, it's all the same, mechanism. If you're, let's say, on your hands and knees every day and you eat right, but you're beating your wife, I mean, you've got to kind of round it all up into changing. Jeff Harvey said something that I thought was really cool today when he was interviewed by Bernard Alvarez on the GIC network today. He said that we have to practice doing good deeds,
That's right.
acts of kindness every day.
Absolutely. Random acts of kindness and brotherly love. It really is that simple. You know, people think that they don't realize, they think they're doing for someone else, but in fact those acts are the most selfish thing you can do in your life, because when you participate in that way, what comes back to you is so extraordinary. I mean, it's exponential. And we're only mirrors, we're only mirroring each other. We see ourselves in the eyes of our partner, our lover, our friend, our children, and it's when we give that we receive. And I thought that the Oracle report, covered that so beautifully as well. It really is about giving, and a lot of us have trouble receiving. We're more comfortable in the giving part of it, but it's such a gift, to be the recipient when you need, especially when you need it.
And, speaking of that, the giving and receiving, I definitely have an example. There was a person in my life that took something from me, something physical. I'm not going to name names, and this was a few years ago. Took something physical from me, robbed me. And I found out about it later. And the way that person said it to me was like, well, you had told me years ago that I could have it, so I took it. And I said, that wasn't the way I meant it. I tried to gift that to you years ago, and you wouldn't take it. Then you came into my life years later, and then you took it from me. You took this physical thing from me, and I was looking everywhere for it, and it took you 2 months to cop to that you literally stole this off my property. You stole it from me. Right.
Wow.
And I said, and what I got from it, and I said to this person, you did two things that were so wrong. One was you robbed yourself of me giving you that gift years ago for you to keep. And
Right.
you robbed me of what it feels like to give a gift.
Right.
So you robbed us both.
Right.
And at the end of the day, she got it. She actually got it. And she started crying. And I said, and that's what it's really all about. So don't you think there's a balance that comes into play? As the giver, you've got to look at the receiving end. You're always giving, but when someone shows up with, let's say a plate full of something they baked for you, and you say, oh, no, don't worry, you don't have money, give that to your kids, you're robbing that person of the great feeling that they have because they made something to give to you, to gift
Right.
to you.
Right.
So we've got to get back into that. I've got some questions coming out from the chat room. Definitely one that is so important to the conversation that we're having. JB wants to know, can Mia describe love? What is love?
Oh, boy.
Let's see, do we have another 4 or 5 hours?
Well, God, it's so many things. It's so many things. It's knowing that the object of your love is more important than you are. It's knowing that, whether it's the man or woman in your life, or your animals, or your children, your parents, your home, your country. It'd be nice, I look forward to the days that we all feel that way again. That you would do whatever it took for them, to care for them in whatever way, needed to happen. And then there's divine love, which really feeds all of those things. I have to say, at various times in my life, I've been a channel, but never more than in recent years since the transit of Venus started in 2004, and starting then, I started consciously broadcasting love to the planet and out to the universe. And when you're working on that level, it becomes impersonal, and I actually did a broadcast for several hours before we began this conversation, and you can feel the light and the warmth and the beauty coming through you and going out through you out into space, and it transcends space and time. It's becomes part of the quantum field, and it's universal, and it touches everyone. And this summer, the light and the love was so elevated and so pure, and we are all receiving it. It's coming, it's coming from source. And it's interesting that, to me, again, going back to the Oracle report, that we are asked to go out and look at the sun at sunset, because you probably remember a month or so ago there, Dutch Sense and I think some others were talking about the piece of the sun that went missing. Do you remember that? There was like a big black spot on the sun. And the sun is, the source. That is our source of life. Without the sun, nothing would survive here on Earth. And of course, the sun is also the sun, again, getting back to Jesus. And I don't believe in organized religion. I believe that, we all have our dialogue, our own direct, telephone to God and source, or whatever you want to call it, goddess, I don't care. It's the light and the love and the power and the truth that exists, and we all have the ability to access that. But I really feel that piece of the sun that went missing is here. And it's activating all of us. So, we all need to stand up and be counted. And like that guy, who confronted John McCain, I'm sure everybody's seen that video clip. James Gilliland sent it around. Also, it's available on YouTube. He went to a town meeting, and he's telling John McCain, you all need to be arrested.
He did, didn't he?
You all need to, you're all war criminals, and you all need to be taken out. And it's really true. I mean, go to Democracy Now! Go to the archives and march for the anniversary of the war in Iraq, the 10-year anniversary. Look at the pictures of those infants who are born. We've ruined the DNA for generations through dirty bombs and white phosphorus, and these poor infants with 10 limbs and one eye, and it's enough to break your heart. And we've done that. America is where this this story is going to resolve itself. America has created so many of the problems.
And welcome back. Our guest tonight is Mia Feroleto. And if you're just joining us and you'd like to ask some questions, go ahead and go to freedomslips.com, hit the chat button, and get yourself in there and ask anything you like. And Thomas, our producer, a mad painter, is his name, and his show, by the way. We'll be happy to hand us over the questions, and we do have a few of them. Mia, you were talking about the America, and in light of the Middle East and the war, and we're not going to go into some political rhetoric, folks, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, I was just simply saying that America is America is karmically responsible for what's going on the planet, and we have allowed the corporations to take advantage of all these other countries' natural resources and basically steal them. It's interesting you used the example of that woman actually taking something that you wanted to give. You know, our banksters go in, and rather than help these countries develop their natural resources for the good of their people, and make a profit, you know, we rape and pillage, and we allow them to rape and pillage and take what doesn't belong to them, to us, and now it's been turned around against us. So, you know, we've allowed this to continue for generation after generation, and now the chickens have come home to roost. And I truly believe that it's only when each of us are squeezed enough to feel the pain, you know, of the people in India and Afghanistan and all these other places. It's only when comfortable Americans can actually experience the loss and the concern for their children and going to bed at home, going to bed at night hungry, and, you know, that we can start to think globally and realize that we are our brother's keeper and we are responsible for what's going on the planet. And then we can change things. Hello?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. You cut out for me, so anytime that happens, just keep on. You're fine. You're with the server, with the station, so you'll keep broadcasting as you do. And I just have to kind of wait around till you come back through again.
Okay.
You know, but yeah, but I get the gist of what you're saying as well. The activists in other countries that I've spoken with, who are out in the streets, you know, Brazil, Turkey, Egypt, etc. The activists have said the same thing that you just said. One by one, I've written to them. They write me back and they say, when America feels the squeeze, you know, basically in a nutshell. I think that's what spawned the opposition of the Vietnamese War, because too many kids, you know, that war was just doling out young men and women. You know, people were losing, you know, women were losing their children, you know, left and right to the draft. And it was such a bloodbath, an obvious bloodbath, that at one point, that's when America stood up and said, "You're not taking my kids.
Right.
You're not taking any more of my children." You know, America was suffering great grief and all. And they took that one to the end. I mean, they worked that corporate war, if you will, till they couldn't anymore.
Right.
But see, that is an example right there. I'm glad you brought it up. That is an example of a really big picture in America, that if we do not say, you know, I look at 2008, and I've been saying this for a couple of years. You know, they crashed the stock market. They took pensions away from people. They took retirements away from people. I mean, your entire life evaporated in your bank account. People who were retired had to go back to work. They took your home. You know, they took your job. They took your credit card. They took your car. You know, repossessed your life, basically. And then said, so what do you think about that? And America didn't stand up and fight it. And I thought for sure at that point we would stand up and fight, you know, giving the banksters $400 billion of our tax money to help them get started again. And what did the banks do? They went out shopping, and Bank of America went out and bought Countrywide, et cetera, et cetera. They all went shopping. They bought Merrill Lynch for pennies on the dollar. They're like, woo-hoo, we got money. They didn't help the credit of the American people at all. Small businesses went flat, and the backbone, the middle class, went completely up in smoke. So I thought, wow, they were. And by the way, with the mention of Bank of America, I think anyone who knows the stock market will know that. And this is good news, people. Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped Bank of America today. This is a good thing because they're insolvent. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Wow. So,
yeah, it's huge news. Huge news. They dropped them from the NASDAQ, from the Dow Jones Industrial. So they're not at that party anymore. So this will be interesting. Keep an eye on Bank of America. But what I'm saying is, why wasn't that enough when they took our credit cards, cars, you know, homes, bank accounts, retirement accounts, jobs, you name it, the ability to spend money, which is what we've been taught to do in a debt-driven society. Why didn't we fight then?
Well, we've been deliberately dumbed down since the beginning of the 20th century. And I think people have become complacent. There's fluoride in our water. There's fluoride in our toothpaste. There has been, a deliberate, what's the word that I'm looking for? A deliberate effort to make us complacent, to make us go along with what we're told to do. And I'm very grateful to be deeply defiant, and I know you are too, Roxy. I had to explain to my parents why I got F's in conduct at St. Teresa's Grammar School, which didn't go over too well. But unless something made sense to me, I wasn't going to do it. And it's all been engineered. It's all been engineered, and I think that people are waking up. The information's getting out there. Anyone can go on the internet and research fluoride and the fact that it shuts down your pineal gland, and which distances you from your kundalini, and it goes on. And the thing is, as soon as you start looking in any one area, there's so much information available that the whole house of cards starts to fall down, and you see how everything is connected. You see that we're supporting Halliburton, and Cheney and all these other people are just making money hand over fist, in war and in banking and taking from the middle class, as you say, the retirement funds and everything. It's all been engineered, and they've got it all in offshore bank accounts. And, I applaud someone like Neil Keenan with the Keenan lawsuit, for the $1 trillion that, was taken, from the Chinese dynasty families, decades ago. And I'm sure you know about Lord Blackheath in London, who a year ago, January or February, stood up in the House of Lords, petitioning the House of Lords to investigate this $15 trillion transfers to the Bank of Scotland that Geithner, approved, and it was bogus money. So it's, they're all just involved in doing these scams, basically. And Neil Keenan, just keeps persevering to settle the suit and create a foundation, for the betterment of humanity. That's
moving forward with $1 trillion,
Right.
Yes.
And Leo Wanta's another one, Ambassador Wanta, who, worked with Reagan, and Reagan had set up this fund for America, and the taxes alone on the Wanta money, would do tremendous things in America. But the bailout money, should have been divided and given to all the people in America, but instead the Bushes and the Cheneys and the Romneys have been using this money illegally for decades, and for their own personal purposes, and they don't send their kids to war.
Yeah, it's a fact, and with that in mind, as far as the whole conversation goes of calling out a spade, I mean, there are two things unfolding that I see. If we give them there's almost like there's a clock ticking, if you will. So in other words, this house of cards that you're talking about, Mia, it's going to fall down regardless. We've on the one hand given them enough rope to hang themselves, so I think we're kind of safe on that note if they don't kill us all first. But then on the other side of that coin is if we move towards it, keep facing reality, if you will. Regardless, it would either way they can't survive. Not in the condition that the corporations have systemically infected the world, if you will, and really taken over to a degree that is toxic. It's imbalanced. It's too big. Government's too big. Government's the slave of the corporations now, but they're getting a piece of the pie, so they're okay with it. And at this point on the planet, I mean, it's no irony that we can see this same movie across the globe.
Well, there's another occurrence happening, though. There's another stream. There's another timeline, and that is the whole truth of abundance. You know, the planet is geared for abundance. The planet is geared for every single one of us and all the creatures to have what we need to live a joyful life. And there are countless people around the globe coming up with barter systems and you know, all kinds of other things to find solutions that don't have to do with keeping this monster moving. And the minute people stand up, even for just one day, and say, I'm not going to work, I'm not buying gas, I'm not buying groceries, I'm not supporting this, things will change. But again, it's moving in that direction anyway. It's happening. People are finding sustainable solutions because they have no other choice. And by doing that, they're empowering themselves. I mean, look at the student loans. If that isn't one of the craziest things going on in America, we're not educating our kids anymore. We're not providing them the opportunity for, you know, for a college education and to pursue their goals. And then even if they do go to school, they can't get a job afterwards.
Yeah, and it's become the number one credit problem in America. As a matter of fact, colleges are going out of business. They're bankrupt because they can't collect on the payments of past students because they don't have the money either. And of course, you know, I'm all about free education, so I think we need to get back to that in this country where education is a right and an honor and should be free. I'm not saying the teachers shouldn't get paid. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm not saying that. You know, in the big picture, I'm just saying it shouldn't cost you $300,000 to go to 4 years of college. It just shouldn't cost you that much. You know, the price of education is outpriced itself.
Yeah, and then we've just increased the interest on their student loans. I mean, they can never pay them back.
Well, that's the age-old, you know, it's the same thing going on in the credit markets as well because, you know, or let's say the property tax market. For all the people who couldn't afford to pay property taxes, what did they do in the municipalities? They doubled the property tax rates in 2 and 3 years' time so they can just keep collecting the money. I mean, these people don't like to go without their dough.
Right.
You know, I mean, don't be taking money from the government. Doesn't like it. But, you know, and then, you know, we've got, maybe the shift is going to be, you know, I've been keeping my eyes on something as far as a benchmark goes. And regardless of what's happening in Syria, you know, I think the president already made his union address, but I was hearing about 2 hours ago that he was going to go on and, you know, talk about, you know, the strike on Syria, and now he's not. Now he's saying that he redesigned the speech, and apparently, and if anybody knows, go ahead and pop that in the chat room. He's redesigned the speech, the president, to say that we're not going in and that we're going to buy more time or whatever and get a closer look at X, Y, and Z. Not my point. My point being this whole idea in this country of, like, does anybody realize that the President of the United States of America, and Mia, I can't hear you. Are you talking?
No, I didn't hear what you just said. I only heard up to, does anyone realize the President of the United States of America?
We're psychic. We can do this. Okay, let me think. What is...
Okay, I'll be quiet. Now send it to me.
Be quiet, and I'll bring it to. No. By the way, Thomas just said that the president is on TV right now. Let's watch the president. Well, good. Tell me what he said, because it's about Syria. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We can click forward here. Just click forward. I want to talk about humility. In order to be on the planet right now, Mia, and do some of this discipline that we're doing, educate others around us, especially in this time period of, what we have described in the Oracle report from September 6th. We're receiving knowledge and instruction to give and what to be mindful of. Somebody had mentioned from the chat room earlier that they naturally do good deeds, but people think that they have accepted a lower position on their little hierarchy. Is this normal? And he wanted to know how to adapt, or she, JB is the name, how do I adapt my methods? And when I saw that question, I really felt for JB. I thought of humility, because if you're of service, it's selfless, and you have to learn humility, and really it has nothing to do with how people view you. What do you think about it?
I think it has nothing to do, I agree with you, it has nothing to do with how people view you. And again, if you listen to your own higher self, if you listen to your promptings, we all know when we're called to do something, to go out of our way on behalf of another person. And it doesn't mean that we have to go out of our way for everyone. We have to listen to ourselves in terms of our guidance, and because we can't be all things to all people. It's physically impossible, it's psychologically impossible, and we all have our own things that bring us happiness and joy that we have to address in order so that we can be of service, because otherwise we're just depleted and no good to ourselves or anyone else. But humility is a very important lesson to learn, and also humor. I just can't stress enough right now the importance of a sense of humor about yourself and others, and looking at the lightness of life and the irony and the hilarity, because humility taken to an extreme can just be another excuse to feel bad about yourself, and none of us right now can afford to go there.
Right. Well, yeah, it's sort of, it's very destructive at this point, and it really hurts, and it really paralyzes when we don't feel good about ourselves. The other end of that spectrum is, there's a saying in Hawaii, and it's called kupono. And kupono means spiritually upright. And I think that's what others, guests on our shows and other shows on Revolution Radio Network, I think this is what they're trying to convey, is that when you set out every day to do the best you can do, and you really are making that effort to do the best you can do, whether it be small acts of kindness, whether you feel like it or not, you really grow into a different type of being.
Absolutely.
It's so apropos for the consciousness. Not only do we as humans need those small acts of kindness, I think that the energy is supporting us doing that.
Absolutely.
Right? So we get rewards from it, whether you will feel the rewards of doing something kind for another.
But there's a difference, Roxy, with people doing things because they feel they have to do them.
No.
It has to be heart center. Yeah.
I knew you were going to say that. And an example of that was a writer of a book, and I don't recall the book right now, and his name was Bill something, and I can't remember the guy's last name, but it was years ago, so I'm allowed. Anyway, but he had said that when the book was an act of kindness, and he gave an example of seeing an old woman on a street corner and helping her cross the street. He said the true acts of kindness happen when you don't go out and boast about them. So can you help the little old lady across the street and just feel the joy of her saying thank you, and that's enough, and never tell another person that you did it.
Right.
And I think that's where the humility comes in, but I also think that's where the miracle of you know what I mean? I think that's one of the things that Facebook's done that's not to our credit, which is everyone wants to be a rock star on Facebook. Everyone, oh, look at me, and, I did this today, and everybody say how great I am. I mean, there's some of them that are so self-indulgent, and on the other hand, there's some of them that are so so amazing. Like you feel their energy, and you're like, oh my God, that's so cool. I want to, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. Oh, I'm going to try that or whatever. And then there's the, 80% of just self-indulgent people just looking to get this attention. You know what I mean? Is that all part of the change we're going through in social media? Are we learning how to conduct ourselves, or is this just shallow, mindless stuff that goes on in social media?
Well, to be honest, I steer clear of social media. I don't do Facebook. I don't. I mean, I watch some things on my computer. I haven't owned a television in my entire adult life, basically, except to watch an occasional movie with a cassette or DVD, whatever. But I don't even. For years, I haven't owned a TV. I don't. I think that it's so easy to create this persona on the computer, and I think it's a trap. A couple months ago, I watched a documentary film that included something called avatars, which I had no idea that existed. But you can have an avatar on the computer and in a virtual reality, and you can decide what you're going to look like and what you're going to wear, and people actually interact with each other as avatars, not as people. And it just blew me away that we had gotten to the point that social interaction was so removed. The opportunity to be removed from each other had reached such an extreme state. But what was so interesting was the man who was the focus of this particular segment of this documentary lived in one of the Scandinavian countries with his mother after having lost his business and home due to the financial crash. And his avatar hooked up with this female avatar from somewhere in the States, in the Midwest. And they have this whole avatar relationship, these icons of themselves or how they'd like to be. And he was actually a very talented musician, and he was a musician. His avatar was a musician. Fast forward, they finally met. They have a baby together. He still lives with his mother in a Scandinavian country. She's in the Midwest. They get together, on a regular basis, and they Skype and all of this. And it's so interesting because his life has been both of their lives, completely transformed. Yet, it could have gone the other way in terms of just pure escapism as well.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is it's all a question of how you use it. So the 20% who are using it to do amazing things is great, and then the 80% who are using it to cultivate their lesser qualities is too bad.
Are you still there? When we allow ourselves to let go of what we cannot control, we are introduced to a new way of life. We become beings of discernment, and we choose where we wish to place our energy. We choose where we wish to focus our lives. This is truly freedom. This is personal evolution. And this is where the magic begins. And that is just a snippet of the TV series that I've been invited to do called Contradiction. And it's going to be airing in October. I think I'll be, Dr. Bernard Alvarez and I are doing the series. There'll be 8 to 15 in the segment. So I just want to remind you that's just a snippet of what we're going to be covering in that. And also I want to thank Vance Burberry, a really good buddy of mine, who contacted me today. They just finished the Pearl Jam. For all of you who are Pearl Jam fans out there, they just did 5 different MTV videos and a bunch of trailer promotions and everything. They just finished it. Vance is the DP, the guy behind the camera, on all of that. So I want to thank him for calling me today and having a real serious environmental discussion that we're going to continue to move forward. And who knows, maybe Vance and I can get involved in doing a documentary as well. I've got another documentary that I've been co-starring in I believe that they start the trailers in September or October. I can't give you any information about that one. This is big time. And they asked me at one point to co-star in it, and they have been an absolute blast to work with. So I want to thank the team. But I can't give you any more. I can't give you any more information on that, but just watch for snippets of trailers that'll be soon to come up. So, Mia, as we work in the world, and like you said, there's good and bad. For instance, you can use Facebook for something good, or you can use it for something bad, just pretty much like anything under the sun. So when we work in the world, in the field out there, on the front lines of basically assisting others, tell me what a day is like for you, because you work with artists and those who paint. And what's that like for you?
Well, I'm trained as an artist myself, and I consider the work that I do with other people to be painting. I just think of it as, it's actually the attitude that I bring towards everything that I do, that I'm creating something, whether it be an exhibition. I've just finished curating a show called This Is Water, which is about to open in a week and a half at the Vermont Institute of Contemporary Arts in Chester, Vermont. And This Is Water comes from David Foster Wallace, who was one of the most important writers of the 20th century, who committed suicide several years ago. And he used that phrase in the graduation speech he gave at Kenyon College in 2005. And he's basically talking about awareness and the fact that, the big T in truth is that, awareness happens. The big news is life before death, not after death. Everybody's waiting around for some big thing to happen once they transition. This is the quote. The capital T truth is about life before death. It is about the real value of a real education, which has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with simple awareness. Awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us, all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water, this is water. And again, it ties into the grand water trine that, we're experiencing astrologically, and the fact that our bodies are made up of 73% water. We're all connected through water, and I think that, that's definitely something that I keep in mind, the fact that each thing that I do throughout the day is not just the thing that I'm doing. It's connected to infinite other things that are going on, on the planet and in the universe. And I think if we can all be mindful, start to think on that level in a quantum way, we tend to treat our thoughts and our actions with a different kind of reverence and relevance, and we understand that what we do really does echo out into infinity. So I try to be mindful.
Right.
I try to have as much fun as possible. I try to, play with my animals and really enjoy them so they have a good time too.
Absolutely. Now, This Is Water. You said you're the curator. Where can anybody see this or be a part of it?
Well, the show is in Chester, Vermont. It opens on September 21st and runs through October 2nd. Their website is Vitica, VTICA.org, and I believe that they'll have pictures of the show up. It's a real combination. There are 12 artists in the show, and some of them are art stars in Manhattan, like Glenn Goldberg, who was just very favorably reviewed by Roberta Smith in the New York Times in August, and Don Nice, who's 80 years old and a pop art, an established pop artist, and whose work is in the Metropolitan Museum, and And then, artists from Vermont and New Hampshire, Kylie Wolgamott, who teaches in the public school system here in Vermont, in Rutland. So, but the work all is about water as medium or theme, and water exists in 3 states also, which is unlike anything else. It's liquid, it's solid in ice, and it's also gas, in terms of air and steam and all of that. And Don Nice had this wonderful quote about watching. He lives on the Hudson River. He has an amazing place in Garrison, right on the Hudson River. And he talks about watching and painting the water move, and then knowing or seeing drops of rain come down, and perhaps those drops of rain are the same molecules of water that he watched float down the river, the year before. And you just realize, again, that everything is interconnected, everything flows together. And when we look at life from that perspective, good and bad and good and evil has a different meaning. It really does have a flow. We're not so much rebelling against, and God knows there's plenty to rail against at the moment, but we're moving with something greater than ourselves. And I really encourage people to be mindful of that. And I want to say also, for those of you who don't have a pet, go out and adopt a dog or a cat, or bring an animal into your life, into your home, into your heart, because whole universes will open up for you as a result of your doing that. I just, encourage you beyond words to do that. And there are so many animals that need a good home, a loving home, and the rewards will come back. They're just infinite, what will come back to you as a result of welcoming an animal into your life. But Roxy, there was one comment. Everyone's comments were important, but there was a comment from Roger, who was talking about the diamond healing, and I just wanted to say yes. The healing of the diamond is true. That does happen. The whole idea is he had written about holding a diamond in your hand and meditating, and that the energy then comes, the healing energy comes and is intelligent and will regulate itself based on the need. Those of us who are working with it can direct it, and send it to someone specific or something specific. And yes, I just wanted to say that is available. I've been working with it since 2004, and you don't need to have a physical diamond to do it. In fact, our bodies are diamonds, and I've had the experience, in fact, of seeing my body, my internal body, my light body become completely faceted like a diamond. And at that point, that was really when I started to be able to transmit in a more deep fashion manner. So I just wanted to be able to say that to Roger.
Oh, thanks. And I remember reading that one too, so I forgot all about it. So good thing you brought it up. Another thing that I'm noticing that people have been asking for the last few days, how to get in touch with you. So what is your public, what's a way for the public to get in touch with you so that they can speak with you privately?
Well, my email is the best way to reach me. It's Mia, M-I-A, Feroleto, F as in Frank, EROLETO, @gmail.com. And I'm happy, I did receive a number of emails as a result of our last interview. And I will answer everyone's, every email I receive, I will answer. It may take a little time, but, absolutely anyone who wants to contact me, please do, and I will get back in touch with you.
Absolutely, and I certainly appreciate it. Like I said, you seem to be somebody who people have really gravitated towards. I think you're making a lot of sense to the public. I certainly appreciate you. They're having a connection with you, and that's an honest thing. It's honest. It's an honest connection. Because, I don't know if, we told anybody this on this show, but Mia, does not charge to help you with an animal or, something that you're going through. Mia, how come you don't charge anybody for the information that you give them?
For the same reason you don't. We're volunteers.
Yeah. I'm going to get someone to volunteer to pay my bills.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Right? But yeah. And that's what I also find profound about you is that you will be there, and you are there for the public. By the way, I just thought it was so funny, Mia. I never heard you spell your name out loud, but I just thought it was really funny when you said MIA.
Missing in
action. Yes, exactly. I just thought, wow, I never heard it that way before.
Well, it's also I am, so I'm here and gone.
Hey, there you go. That kind of answers a lot of people's questions. But that's why we're feeling that, torn, vacillating. We're here 1 minute, we're gone 1 minute, we're up, we're down, we're this, we're that, because we are. And just get used to it, people. So I want to say something from a sweetheart that wrote on another thread from Andrea. Andrea. I don't know how she pronounces her name. So she says this. Roxy, I promise you that there's only 1% of my Facebook friends who are aware and awake to what is going on, and I feel despair, an indigo thing. For others that just refuse to open their minds and see, I feel helpless right now. And then she says, even on the flip side, the very people that can help, psychic, mediums, spiritual workers, are also so wrapped up in thinking positive that they don't want to even think about anything in the world that is negative in their reality. And that is not a good thing if we are to conquer the evil that we face. How do we get those people on board, she asks.
Well, she's totally right. It's a fallacy to think you can just focus on the positive. The only way you can implement change in your own life and in the world is to take a square look at your life and yourself and what you're doing and your patterns, and ask yourself, if it's working for you. It's like Sarah Palin, how's all this hopey, changey stuff working for you? Well, you've gotta ask yourself that, and you've got to be ruthless with yourself about the answer, because only then will you be able to make a difference in your own life. If you're, to me, when you're just focusing on the positive, you're afraid to look at the negative. And, we're programmed that way. It's not positive or negative. It's just aspects of what's going on in our lives. We signed up for the whole deal. We came here to experience the gamut in terms of all different kinds of things. And when you realize that that's all it is, and it's transitory, when you choose something else, that will happen too. So, but you just cannot cut off, a whole segment. And I also want to say, regarding channelers and all this stuff, nobody can tell you better than you. I read some of this channeled material, and I don't believe more than half of it. You are your own best source of information, fact. And whatever, it's all nice, it's uplifting, but, each of us has our own guides, our own source of information, our own divine spark, and that's what needs to get activated. Nobody can tell you or do it for you. You've got to do it yourself, and that's where the adventure is. That's what we're here to do. And when we do that, that's when we can start, manifesting.
Right. You mentioned earlier in the show about the 60s. And, I find it very interesting, like some of the hip words at the time, hip being one of them. You hip, that was one of them in the 60s. Another one was peace and the peace signs. But one that sticks with me that's coming back is the word righteous. I remember saying that in my youth, righteous. And everything was righteous. And what you just said about everybody hearing their own guidance and having their own guides and truly knowing their own path, their own divine path, if you will, I think that does come from the word righteous. I want to start using that word more often because I think it comes from rite of passage. And I think that's where we have all arrived, at the corner of righteous and rite of passage. What do you have to say about that?
I'm in total agreement.
Yay!
I'm in total agreement. And when you look at a righteous man or woman, you know it. You know what you're looking at. You know what's coming out of their mouths. You know what their actions are. You look at Martin Luther King and, he walked his talk. He knew he wasn't going to survive. He had no, fantasies about that. And, I recently read an article that his extraordinary I Have a Dream speech, he wasn't even going to give that speech. So much of that speech was in fact spontaneous. Mahalia Jackson said to him, talk about the dream, Martin. And he did. And, obviously he was channeling, he was being divinely guided. He was an instrument. That's one of the most powerful speeches of more than the 20th century. And, that's the kind of quality of information that we all need to seek out, and it's available to us, but we can't listen to, somebody's weekly, channel on whatever. It just doesn't work that way. We open our hearts, we listen to what comes in, and, that's where our protection, that's where our guidance, that's the source of our love and everything else good that comes to us comes in that way.
Correct. A lot of people were also asking about, how do they know who to trust and this and that. And I think you just hit the nail on the head. You know when someone is righteous.
Absolutely.
You know when someone is saying something that resonates with you, that boosts you, that illuminates you, that encourages you, inspires you. And by the way, just talking with you for the last couple of hours has inspired me again, Mia. It happens every time I talk to you.
Well, thank you, Roxy. You inspire me too.
Oh, I'm such a crybaby.
Yeah, you are not. You're a really gutsy lady.
Oh my gosh, if you only knew, my dear. Yeah, and you do. That's the thing. You actually do. You heard me at my lowest point. So yeah, I guess I have to trust you. But the point that I'm making is the idea of inspiration and the idea of who do we trust. And, I'm starting to see certain newscasts. And I don't mean this to sound rude to anybody, but even watching certain State of the Union addresses, I find myself peeing in my pants. It's like a Saturday Night Live skit to me. That's how bad it's getting out there.
It really is that bad. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that, again, it goes back to that. Is this person inspiring you? Are they saying something that reaches deep inside of you and clicks, or even a mini aha moment, anywhere from a mini aha moment to a maximum aha moment or life-changing moment? Whatever it is, if it's not all of that, and back to the very beginning of the show, beauty. If, a Native American Indian many years ago, about a decade ago, said to me once over the phone during a pretty tough time in my life, and he said this to me, and it just made me stop crying instantly. And he said, if it is not of beauty, it is not of the Creator. Right. And if it's not of the Creator, don't pay attention.
It doesn't belong in your life.
No.
And we have to really circle our wagons with like-minded people. because, we have to find our tribe. And, for the first time in my life, I really feel that I've found mine, which is such an extraordinary experience. And
yes,
we have to find our tribes.
We're almost at the end of the show, so I have to say this. Look, we have a surprise show for everybody next month with Mia and a surprise guest. And I'm not going to say anything about it right now, but you guys have got to tune in, because wait till you hear what has gone on in her life. And, oh, my gosh, and the surprise guest's life. And you guys are going to, it's going to blow their minds. So you think it's going to blow their minds?
It is, and actually Roxy is responsible.
Yes, just send that check to the P.O. box.
As soon as the funds are available, the check will be in the mail.
Let me look at the schedule real quick, because you guys are doing this. Okay, it's October 1st. So I have to figure out also before then, I've got to talk to Ruth and find out the numerology of that day and find out whether we even picked that day on top of it. So that's going to be very exciting. We'll have some information on the schedule page, so just keep checking the schedule page, but I'm not going to let that cat out of the bag right away.
They're listening right now, the special guest, I know. So
the special guest is listening. Quite a few people are listening, as a matter of fact, that have tuned in, called me today to want to know more. But we're not giving out any clues yet, are we?
No.
So, as a matter of fact, on a more serious note, it is the most fascinating story. And what is happening today, and some of the places you're going to be going to as well. I want to talk about that once you solidify that too, Mia, because I think it's very important for people to hear who you really are and what you really do. People don't really know who Mia Feroleto is yet. So we're going to use that show to sort of give them a bigger picture of who you are. And they're going to be like, you mean for the past 4 hours, that's who I've been listening to? But anyway, We'll let that cat out of the bag when the time comes, because you're just quite the lady out there in the world. And any last wonderful anything you want to say to the audience, because we've got time ticking, and I think we've got less than a minute before we're out of here.
Be happy, just be happy. Choose to be happy, and eliminate the things that are making you unhappy.
Absolutely. It's a tall order, but it's harder to be sad. It takes a lot more energy to be angry and to be sad than it is to be happy, don't you think?
Absolutely.
It's a good note to fly out on. Mia, another excellent visit with you. And next time you come back, you'll have somebody else very special, and we'll sit here in the living room and with a little help from his friends, if you will, who all work at Revolution Radio. Not only does that make it work, there's another component, and that's you. That's you, the listener, who has dedicated your time to listening, passing on the shows to one another. Some of you purchase archive shows. Some of you donate money on a monthly basis, weekly basis even, from a few pennies to a few $100s. This is what the community is all about. So Revolution Radio is not just a radio station on your dial. By the way, it's practically number one in all talk radio. Thank you very much. But it's not just a radio station. It is a community of different folks that have all joined together and volunteered our efforts to make this one big broadcast for the world. So I want to thank everyone involved, guests alike, for volunteering their time and their efforts to make this what it is. And I don't want to be anywhere else. That's all there is to it. And I get choked up when I say that, because it has changed my life. To everyone who is listening this evening, because this show is going to be absolutely powerful. Let me give you a little bit of insight for those of you who are not familiar with my guest and friend this evening. Mia was on the show not too long ago and had an incredible response. to the listeners. She was in touch with so many different people because of the show. Wonderful things occurred after the show that we did. But Mia says that we all have the capacity to connect to other dimensions and higher realms of thought. Like any muscle, the skill is not developed unless it's used. Being able to access information and healing energies from other dimensions will be explored in our discussion again this evening and even more. Now, Mia Feroleto will share personal experiences and examples of how the spiritual is at work within her own life and how she helps to facilitate others to develop these skills within themselves. A point of focus will be how to feel empowered to participate more fully in your own life while making a contribution to the world as a whole by following the prompts of our higher self that are provided for us on a daily basis. We're really going to address something this evening exactly on that note, because I asked my audience for a few days now, and I asked if anybody had been feeling anxious, panic attacks, lost at times, underlying feeling of disconnect or discontent or dis-ease. And you should see what you all have said. And in one hand, it breaks my heart at some of what you have said. So many people replied to this post saying that they are disconnecting more and more from society on purpose. That really saddens me, and I do relate to that. I really do. And it's like they can't stop. And I'm going to read a few of the posts as we go into the show so we can address them personally. Many people have even asked if they could speak with Mia one-on-one, and we'll give
Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
And good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We've got a great show ahead of us, and I just thank all of you who are part of the discussion already in the last few days. We're going to answer a lot of your questions. We're going to address a lot of the issues that we are all having at this point, I included. And I just want to thank you for your participation right off the bat, listeners. Chat room, hello, good evening. Today is September 10th, 2013. You're listening to The Truth Denied, and we are broadcasted via Revolution Radio, which is at freedomslips.com. If you want to join that chat room, just go ahead and go to freedomslips.com, and you'll see a chat at the very top. Click that, and you're basically in. And go ahead and join the chat room as well, if you please. And if you have any questions from the chat room, please feed them into the chat room. And Thomas, our wonderful producer, Thomas, say hello to everybody.
Good evening.
And Thomas will be picking up those questions for you. Before we get started, I have a couple of things that I would like to address, and then there's something that Mia sent to me that I'd like to read to all of you. Of course, you know the guest this evening is Mia Feroleto. I must say that out of everyone that we have had on the show in this past year, Mia has gained amazing interest from the audience. She's magnetic. What I love about Mia Feroleto is that she's clear, she's concise, and she has no hidden agenda. This relationship that has been forming between Mia and myself is absolutely wonderful, and I don't mind saying it. It's just another human being in my life that is completely trustworthy to bring forward her experience table, as well as just absolute truth. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So I'll bring her on in just a moment, so everyone just hang in there. I want to say thank you to everyone who supports us at Revolution Radio. You know, the more we traverse on this earth sharing the truth, exposing the non-truth, if you will, the more we need to reach out in radio. And that Revolution Radio has provided this forum for hosts to be able to communicate with the world at large is absolutely fabulous. And what makes this all work is not just the hosts or the producers or those who are behind the scenes or the owner Nighthawk who, you know, built this from the ground up. And if not, maybe Hawk and the audience together can just let us know if it's cutting out too much. And Mia, if I cut out for you and it gets to where you don't know what I'm talking about, just let me know and we'll just switch me to a ground line or something.
Okay, that sounds great.
Cool, we'll just all agree. All right, so here's what Mia, you sent to me to read to the audience. And what it is it's the Oracle Report. And it's the crescent moon phase, which is challenge, growth, and gathering. The moon is in Scorpio, ruling Mahavidya Shodashi with Matangi, the administrator, and you'll explain this to us later. The update comes from September 6th, discussing the energy of Shodashi. So hang in there with me, people. Everything about today's energy speaks to controlled, concerted, skilled navigation. There are two major themes developing today. The first theme involves our personal paths. We are receiving knowledge and instruction today, so remember to be mindful of animal sightings. We are also giving knowledge and instruction to communication with our higher selves, extending the lines of our lives closer to our true course. It's about giving and receiving. People will tend to be more competitive and emotionally uncontained to various degrees, so keep this in mind also. Petty tyrants rear up. The second theme is on a much grander scope. If we were living in ancient times, we would be part of a mystery school. We do this today in a modern way, linked through the internet. It's an inferior method to the old way, but it works for now as we rectify the world back to nature, back to Gaia Sophia. Mystery schools will return in our lifetimes because we are restorers. We are birthing the second Renaissance. We transcend the boundaries of physicality in service to the same mission, and we do it despite the boundaries of space and time. We are located around the world and read the report at different times, but are united in our efforts. Today brings a special confluence of energies that asks us to come together with my focus at whatever time the sun sets where you are on Earth. We are hooking up via the sun. Our lights will go on all over the world. It is our version of 1,000 points of life. Picture it. The grid of the Earth electrifying in succession. Remember that we are maintaining the integrity of the fabric of humanity this month. We are grounding consciousness with the planet to hold beauty, life in place. So that's what you say as you face the direction of the setting sun. You say the words, I ground consciousness with the planet to hold beauty, life in place. And I personally call this holding the space. Give you the information to be able to do that so that you can get with Mia one-on-one in private. This show is such a, it's going to be rewarding for everybody, because I'll tell you something. What the world needs is love, for sure. But in my personal situation, and many of you out there, we need hope. And I find that Mia is gifted with that hope. So without any further ado, I want to bring Mia onto the show, and then I'd like to read something that she wanted me to read to all of you, and then we're going to plow right into this. Mia, my friend, jump on. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, Roxy. What an intro, my God. It's so great to be back here with you. I had such a great time on July 5th, and so many incredible things have happened in my life as a result of our conversation that evening that, I owe you, the sun, the moon, and the stars.
I'll take it. I'll take it. And for those of you who don't know, Mia and I have also spent time off the air talking about, so many things. And Mia, you truly have a gift, and you're using your gift. And I think that's really the underlying of this discussion is we all have gifts. And we just really start to need, we need to start using them. And I think that we can really engage people in that energy as opposed to this stifling energy that seems to be upon us at this point, that's paralyzing so many lives. And like I said, it truly breaks my heart. By the way, if you notice when Mia laughs, it's really contagious. Mia, you have a contagious laugh.
Well, I think laughter in general is contagious. And I'm sure everyone who's listening has noticed that when they really start to laugh, they just want to keep doing it. They just want to go on and continue the conversation in whatever direction it was headed that prompted that in the first place.
It's so true. And it releases endorphins that are so good for us. And, some of the people that had made some comments, and I completely could relate to it. I found myself, in the last 4 months, days going by.
Oh, you blacked out there.
Yeah, you cut out a few times, Roxy. I'm not, just so
okay.
You know, Thomas.
Okay. And I don't know why that's happening, and it seems to happen more and more often. So I did hear the live recording of our last show that we were cutting out on. And let me ask the audience, can we just ask anyone in the chat room, are we cutting out live as well? Because if we are, I will have Thomas call me on a cell phone again, because we have not been able to figure this out. So, Thomas, do you see anybody in the chat room that's saying they can't hear us?
They're about 30 seconds behind, and
okay.
Hawk says yes.
Okay, so I am cutting out. All righty.
Once in a while, and it is not unbearable.
Okay.
So,
all right.
It really wasn't. That's why I didn't say anything until that last time there. You just missed a word there.
Okay, let's see if we can continue. So, let's see. Mia, are you still with us?
I am, and thank you for reading that, Roxy. That was such an important thing for us to hear today, September 10th, since tomorrow is the anniversary of 9/11 and the World Trade Center bombings or plane crashes. And I think, having read your Facebook post, the anxiety and the stress that people are feeling has a lot to do with the fact that we, are on an anniversary, and even though we might not consciously be thinking of these things, certainly our subconscious and our bodies are very much aware that this is going on around us. So beauty, art, music, nature, animals is the key. It's the release for all of us in terms of connecting and letting go and elevating.
That's a lot, and I loved what was in the report as well because there's so much that makes sense. I love that you face the setting sun and say, I ground consciousness with the planet to hold beauty, life, and place. Because truly, with all the upheaval going on everywhere, on social media sites, on television, people bashing others, the haters out there hating on others because they disagree with them, whatever it may be. What we need so much of is to remind ourselves is that we live on such a beautiful planet, and we've got to bring that beauty back into existence, just like what it says, because without it, I can see why people are suffering. I mean, if you can't see beauty in the sky, or a tree, or a plant, or a flower, or your food that you eat, like enjoying your food that you eat, or like you said, animals as well, or friendships or fellowship, I mean, what would there be to live for?
Absolutely. Those are all the things that nurture us, and they're all the things that technology has pushed us away from, and we have to get back to basics. We have to get back to a sense of community, and beauty is the doorway to higher realms. The Greeks and the Romans knew something when they incorporated beauty and aesthetics into everything that they did. Every object in their home was beautiful, and today the average person has no awareness of art, the charge that real art can bring to one's life, and they're just parked in front of the TV set and eating GMO engineered food that has no nutritional value, whereas if you focus on eating fruits and vegetables, you can actually feel the energy coming into your body as you're consuming them, and it's just a totally different experience.
Right. What is one of the first rule of thumb? I'm going to take a look here at some of what people have said, and again, this saddens me. There was one comment that really struck me. Actually, there's a few of them that really struck me dumb. And I really felt for them when they said this. Let me see if I can find the comment. It was, I won't name her, but she said that because this was someone who was